Picture yourself entering the gym on an empty stomach. No breakfast, no protein shake, no pre-workout supplement, and no banana for an energy boost. Just water and your natural physiological state. For most individuals, this scenario alone can induce apprehension. You can almost anticipate the warnings echoing in your mind. You will lose muscle. You will feel feeble. You will collapse midway. Your metabolism will decelerate. We have been conditioned to believe that exercising without prior nourishment is not merely ineffective, but hazardous. However, what if this apprehension stems from a misconception about the actual functioning of the human body? Here's a detail seldom acknowledged. Throughout the majority of human existence, physical activity preceded meals rather than following them. Hunting, gathering, evading threats, and constructing shelters all demanded strenuous physical exertion, often performed on an unfed stomach. Your body did not evolve with the expectation of a snack before strenuous activity. It evolved anticipating exertion first and caloric intake later. When you engage in physical activity during a fasted state, a distinct internal process unfolds. You don't simply expend calories, you transmit a signal. This signal instructs your body on how to prioritize energy, stress management, fat utilization, and survival mechanisms. Most people never activate this particular signal. Bear with me, as what transpires next is infrequently discussed and may entirely reshape your perception of exercise, fasting, and fat reduction. When you exercise in a fasted state, you are not merely working your muscles. You are engaging in a direct dialogue with your hormonal regulatory system. This system silently determines whether your body retains energy, liberates it, or sequesters it for crises. The system does not respond to motivation or self-control. It responds to cues. And movement performed in a fasted condition constitutes one of the most potent cues your body can receive. Here's a revelation that entirely alters your understanding of muscles. Even during periods of inactivity, your muscles are responsible for up to 80% of glucose uptake after you consume food. This implies that muscles are not merely instruments for lifting or running, they are your body's primary energy management apparatus. Consider them less as engines and more as storage facilities. When muscles are active and responsive to insulin, they absorb fuel efficiently. When they are inactive or resistant, there is no productive outlet for fuel, so it is shunted into storage, often deeply embedded around your internal organs. This is visceral fat. Now, envision your body as a hybrid vehicle. It possesses two fuel reserves, incoming sustenance and stored fat. Most individuals spend their entire lives operating on a single tank, constantly replenishing it while never utilizing the other. Fasted workouts compel a switch. They communicate to your body, fuel is required, but none is forthcoming. Consequently, the system adapts. Muscles, the liver, and the nervous system commence synchronized operation, much like a well-trained ensemble, precisely unlocking stored energy without succumbing to alarm. The profound impact of this process lies in its silent execution. There is no discomfort, no dramatic sensation, no warning light. Presently, even as you are attentive, your body is making a decision. Should energy be reserved for later, or should it finally be released and utilized? Fasted training does not demand the answer. It educates the body on which answer is secure. Let's decelerate and meticulously examine the internal mechanisms when you exercise while fasting. This is not a singular reaction, but a sequential process, with each stage building upon the preceding one. In the hours following your last meal, insulin levels gradually decline. This solitary alteration transforms everything. Insulin functions as a warehouse manager, whose responsibility is to store incoming provisions. When food is available, it bars access to your stored energy and declares, "We do not require this yet." However, when insulin levels diminish, those restraints loosen. Now, introduce movement. When you lift, ascend an incline, or exert your muscles in this low insulin state, your muscles dispatch an urgent communique upstream. Immediate energy is required. Since no new fuel is entering the system, your body turns inward. Fat cells receive the signal to release energy, particularly visceral fat, which is metabolically active and more readily accessible during stress. This is not a destructive process. It is a calculated withdrawal from reserves. You are not weaker in this state. You are instructing your body that stored energy is usable. This is often where apprehension surfaces. Indeed, cortisol levels rise during fasted exercise, but this increase is transient and purposeful. Cortisol is not inherently a panic hormone, it is a logistical hormone. It facilitates the transport of fuel to where it is needed. The danger lies not in transient cortisol surges, but in persistently elevated cortisol levels. When fasted workouts are paired with adequate recovery, subsequent meals, sufficient sleep, cortisol levels rebound lower than their initial state. The nervous system cultivates resilience. Simultaneously, growth hormone surges. This hormone safeguards muscle tissue, promotes fat utilization, and signals repair processes. The body recognizes its capacity to meet demands without sacrificing tissue. You are not taxing the system, you are training it. As this pattern recurs, the liver escalates ketone production. Ketones function as reassuring molecules. They communicate to the brain and muscles, fuel is stable, you can relax. Mitochondria respond by proliferating. More engines signify increased efficiency and reduced panic. This explains why individuals accustomed to fasted training frequently report a more stable energy, fewer cravings, and expedited recovery. This is not due to enforced discipline, but because their metabolism has developed confidence. This exemplifies genuine adaptation. For decades, exercise science was predicated on a simplistic assumption. Training without food must be detrimental. The rationale appeared self-evident. Without incoming fuel, muscle tissue must be catabolized for energy, and for a considerable period, this conviction remained largely unchallenged. However, as measurement methodologies advanced and researchers began to examine beyond fleeting observations, a remarkably different picture began to emerge. When scientists contrasted fed versus fasted training, they consistently observed something. While the workouts initially felt more arduous, a beneficial internal process was occurring. Fasted workouts dramatically amplified fat oxidation, implying the body became significantly more adept at extracting energy from stored fat instead of relying on immediate caloric intake. Concurrently, muscle loss did not escalate, provided that total protein consumption was adequate later in the day. This detail is crucial. Muscle preservation is not contingent on consuming food before training. It is dependent on supplying the essential building blocks after the metabolic signal has been transmitted. Even more astonishing was the impact on insulin sensitivity. Individuals who trained in a fasted state frequently exhibited greater improvements than those who trained fed, signifying that their muscles became more proficient at absorbing glucose later, once food was reintroduced. Subsequently, a discovery genuinely surprised researchers. Fasted exercise powerfully activates AMP-activated protein kinase, AMPK, a metabolic master switch that is only engaged when energy reserves are low and demand is high. AMPK functions as a systems engineer. It temporarily attenuates growth and storage processes while enhancing efficiency, repair mechanisms, and fuel utilization. The same pathway is linked to improved metabolic flexibility, reduced inflammation over time, and more consistent, long-term weight regulation. Animal studies initially demonstrated this, and small human trials subsequently corroborated it. Endurance athletes and strength trainers observed these advantages years before they were formally incorporated into academic texts. However, here is the vital contextual caveat. This is not a universal prescription. Fasted training is unsuitable if you are underweight, pregnant, managing uncontrolled blood sugar conditions, recuperating from illness, or struggling with disordered eating patterns. Furthermore, intensity is paramount. Fasted workouts excel with activities such as walking, light cardiovascular exercise, and controlled resistance training, rather than daily maximum effort. If performance significantly declines, this should not be interpreted as weakness, it is vital information. Because the essence of fasted training lies not in pushing harder, but in instructing the body to operate with greater intelligence under duress. So, what truly transpires when you exercise while fasting? You do not penalize your body, you communicate with it. Fasted training is not about sheer willpower, deprivation, or demonstrating resilience. It is about reestablishing a dialogue that modern life has subtly disrupted. Your body does not articulate in words. It communicates through hormones, signals, and patterns. When food is continuously available, those signals become obscured. Insulin levels remain elevated. Stress remains heightened. The body never needs to inquire, "Can I depend on stored energy?" because it is never compelled to. However, when you introduce movement during a fast, you transmit a highly specific message. Demand exists. Handle it calmly. And when this message is consistently delivered, coupled with recovery, sleep, and subsequent nourishment, your biology adapts. Fat ceases to be hoarded as emergency fuel. Muscle is no longer sacrificed under stress. Energy becomes stable rather than reactive. This is why fasted training often feels different over time. Not easier, but more refined. Hunger subsides. Cravings lose their urgency. Energy fluctuations throughout the day become less pronounced. This is not because you are controlling your body, but because your body once again trusts you. It is imperative to state this unequivocally. Fasted training is not a panacea. It will not override chronic sleep deprivation. It will not compensate for incessant psychological stress, and it will not be effective if every workout is approached as a struggle. This is a tool, not a dogma. When employed judiciously, it complements walking, resistance training, appropriate nutrition, and rest. When utilized recklessly, it simply becomes another stressor. Your ancestors did not metabolize fat due to strict discipline. They metabolized fat because their environment necessitated movement first and eating later. Their bodies developed flexibility because survival demanded it. You possess that same biological inheritance. However, to access it in the contemporary world, you must demonstrate safety. You achieve this by ensuring adequate sleep, proper recovery, intentional eating, effective stress management, and selecting physical activity that challenges without overwhelming. When these elements converge, a powerful transformation occurs. Your hormonal baseline resets. Your stress response calms. Your metabolism ceases to behave as if it is under constant threat. At that moment, the stubborn visceral fat, the very type linked to illness and inflammatory responses, finally releases its hold. This isn't due to struggle or effort, but because your physiological system no longer perceives a necessity for its presence. Therefore, I'm eager to hear your thoughts. What aspect of this presentation most astonished you? Was it the hormonal shifts, the concept that regular exercise in a fasted state can diminish stress over time, or the insight that fat accumulation often serves as a defensive mechanism rather than a lapse in self-control? Please share your perspectives in the comments section. Your personal account could provide clarity or comfort to someone else who happens to read it. And for more data-driven insights devoid of exaggerated claims, consider subscribing to this channel. In our subsequent installment, we will dissect the prevalent errors individuals commit post-fasting and explain how subsequent dietary choices can either solidify these gains or subtly undermine them. Because once you comprehend your own biological functions, you cease to battle against them. And that's the point at which advancements truly become enduring.